the testimony of any witness, whatever weight you believe it merits. You may take into account, among other things, the witness's ability and opportunities to observe, memory, manner, or any bias or prejudice the witness may have, and the reasonableness of the testimony considered in light of all the evidence in the case. A ruling, gesture, or comment I make during the course of the trial should influence your decision in this case. At times, I may ask questions of witnesses. If I do, such questions do not in any way indicate my opinion about the facts or indicate the weight I feel you should give to the testimony of the witness. Ordinarily, the attorneys will develop all pertinent evidence. It is the exception rather than the rule that an individual juror will have an unanswered question after all of the evidence is presented. However, if you feel an important question has not been asked or answered in the paper, give it to the bailiff before the witness leaves the stand. I will decide whether or when your question will be from being asked. Jurors, please do not hold it against either side that you did not get an answer. Once one of the parties questions the witness on direct examination, the other party on cross-examination, redirect and sometimes recross and redirect and recross, and finish with the witness, I will ask the attorneys, may this witness be permanently excused. If you have a question that you wish to have this witness answer, you need to raise your hand and get the bailiff's attention, because I will ask the attorneys, may this witness be permanently excused, and if they both agree, then the witness will not be allowed to return. The witness need to raise your hand and get the bailiff's attention. And when you ask the question, put down your name and your juror number and the date, and make it legible, okay? There are a number of important rules governing your conduct as jurors during the trial. You must decide the case solely on the evidence received in court. You must not consider anything you may have read or heard about the case outside the courtroom. During the trial and your deliberations, you must avoid news accounts of the trial, whether they be on radio, television, the internet, written publication. You will note that there is a camera in the courtroom. The camera is prohibited from showing the jury at any time. And they're experienced and they know the rules of the court, and they follow it very carefully, just to let you know that this court be appropriate. So there are cameras in the courtroom. Please ignore them. If you feel that someone is trying to influence you in any way at all, I'll let the court know, and we'll take action. Understood? I know that many of you use cell phones, the internet, and other tools of technology. During this trial and your deliberations, you also must not talk to anyone in person about this case, or to use these tools to communicate electronically with anyone about the case. This includes your family and friends. You may not communicate with anyone about the case on your cell phone or any other device that can access the internet through email, text messaging, or on Twitter, through any blog or website, through any internet chat room, by way of any other social networking websites, such as Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, now known as X, and or YouTube. Don't use the internet dictionaries, Wikipedia, or any other source of information. You may rely only on the evidence presented in the trial in this case. You as jurors must decide this case based solely the evidence presented here within the four walls of this courtroom. Do not try to find out information from any source outside the confines of this courtroom. Until you retire to deliberate the case, you must not discuss this case or the evidence with each other. If an exhibit is admitted in evidence, you should examine it yourself and not talk about it with other jurors until you retire to deliberate. It is important that you keep an open mind and not decide any part of the case until the entire case has been completed and submitted to you. Their special responsibility as jurors demands that throughout this trial you exercise your judgment impartially and without regard to any sympathy, bias, or prejudice. After you retire to deliberate, you may begin discussing the case with your fellow jurors, but you cannot discuss the case with anyone else until you have returned a verdict and the case is at an end. To minimize the risk of accidentally overhearing something that is not evidence in this case, please be careful if you meet in the hallways with other people that you do not discuss the case. If someone discusses the case in your presence, you're to immediately report that action to the bailiff or a member of the court staff. Although it's natural to visit with people you meet, please do not talk with any of the attorneys, parties, witnesses, or spectators, either in or out of the courtroom. If you meet in the hallways, there's nothing wrong with saying good morning or good afternoon, but your conversation should end there. If the attorneys, parties, and witnesses do not greet you outside of court, they're not being rude, they're just carefully observing this rule. Witnesses other than the parties, representatives of the state, and expert witnesses will wait outside the courtroom until they are called to testify. Witnesses may not talk to other witnesses while waiting to testify. The attorneys are responsible for monitoring their own witnesses to assure that they do not enter the courtroom. Prosecuting attorney may now make an open statement. Defendant's attorney may make an open statement, or he may wait until later in the trial to do so. What is said in the opening statement is not evidence. The opening statement is simply the attorney's opportunity to tell you what the attorney expects the evidence to show. Everybody stand up. Shake it a little bit. Maybe rousy from lunch, or not tolerate it. Stay awake, eyes open, be alert. Is that clear to everyone on this jury? Yes, sir. Will not tolerate anyone nodding off or closing their eyes. So make sure that you stay awake and keep your eyes open. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, you may be seated. This court has discussed the matter with the attorneys. Don't discuss anything when the court's talking. This court has discussed this opening statement, and each asked for 30 minutes. I'll let them know when they have 2 minutes left in their opening statement. State will go first. Garcia, who is going to take the opening statement?
I will not.
All right, you have 30 minutes. Please let the court will let you know when you've got 28 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Garcia. You've met my co-counsel Spencer Wilson already. We represent the citizens of Doña County, the community where you live. Those of us who call Doña County home. What we're going to present to you today is a case of murder. This case may take a few days, so I'm just going to get right into it. This is what we expect the evidence to show. The defendant, Oscar Sandoval, shot and killed his wife, left her on the side of the road, in the dirt, bleeding to death. It was April 1st, 2024, about 8 o'clock at night. The two of them, the defendant and his wife, Sharina Al-Jabari, were driving down University going towards Mesilla, near Zia Middle School in a black Ford Explorer. At some point, they stopped on the side of the road. It was 8 o'clock at night, so it was dark outside. When they were on the side of the road, another person, her name is Mariah Chavez, she began driving from the opposite direction. She noticed the car stopped on the side of the road. She noticed that there were no flashers on. She noticed there were no lights in it. She kind of slowed down to be careful of going past it. As she got closer to it, Shireen ran in front of her car with her hand like this. She had to slam on her brakes. She almost hit her. She sat there. She watched her, Shireen, run across the road. Then she watched as a man came out from behind the car that was stopped and started chasing after her. Then she watched as Shireen turned around. Then she watched that man who was holding a gun shoot her 4 times. Shireen was trying to run up the embankment on the side of the road. She didn't get very far. She had just been shot. So she fell. She fell in the dirt, face down. She was barefoot. So as that man walked back across the road to get to the car, points at her. So she reversed her car. She started backing up. The man got in his car and drove down the road towards Mesilla. So when he was gone, she pulled back up to try to see if she could help Shireen. She called 911. What she found when she got to Shireen was a 39-year-old woman, barefoot, face down in the dirt, bleeding to death, left for dead, moaning. She could hear her gasping for air. So as she's on the phone with 911, she turned Shireen over, tried to do CPR. Life-saving measures, anything she could think of. She was trained to be a paramedic at the time. She listens for any signs of life. She hears moaning. She hears gasping for air. Then a few minutes later, towards the end of the 911 call, she tells the operator, "I think she's gone. I think she died." And she did. She died there on the side of the road, barefoot, in the dirt, in the dark, left for dead by the man that shot her. So the deputies arrived, a lot of them. First responders, they take over life-saving measures. Mariah was told she just got off to the side to let them take care of things. She was covered in Shireen's blood. But where was the suspect? Mariah said, she gave a description of the car, partial description of the license plate, said he went that way, towards Mesilla. Nobody knew where he was. He was gone. So police began looking for the car. Mesilla Marshals, actually, to be exact. How did they find it? The defendants were not concerned that night because neither one of their parents had come home. Neither one. So she used her phone to find her mother's phone. So she went down to Sunland Park. She didn't know anyone in Sunland Park. But she went down to where she believed she would find her mother's phone. What she found was her father's car. Now she thinks something terrible's happened. She called the police again. Sheriff's deputy arrived. You'll hear from him. He pulled up. He saw the car. He saw what he believed to look like a bullet hole in the door frame of the passenger side. So when he saw that, he called for a special team to come, hold the situation, got a search warrant, and they searched the car for any evidence that they might find of anything. What did they find? They found a woman's shoe. They found a purse. They found a phone in the passenger side. They also found a debit card with Shireen's name on it. What else did they find? they found the defendant's identification. His identification. They found one of his checks. Well, there's a witness that's going to tell you that she saw somebody drive up in this car after the shooting, leave it there, and walk away. Another witness is going to tell you that the defendant, he lives right there near where the car was left. But where was he? They still didn't know where he was. They couldn't find him yet. You're also going to hear from another witness who had spoken to the defendant after the shooting. He told her what he had done. He told her that he had killed her. And then he left. He fled to Mexico. With this person's help, the Mexican authorities were able to locate the defendant in Juarez. The Mexican authorities arrested him and brought him to the border crossing at Santa Teresa, where our own Mesilla marshals were there waiting for him. After 9 days, Oscar Sandoval was finally in custody, charged with the murder of his wife and pointing the gun at the witness. That's what happened. You'll see some photos that are going to be difficult for you to see, and I'm sorry. You'll hear from witnesses that will tell you what they know. You'll hear this was a tragedy. You'll hear that the investigation led to this man. You'll hear that he was found in Mexico after he killed his wife. He killed her, left her on the side of the road, barefoot, in the dirt, left her to die. He left her there, and then he left the country. You'll hear this was first-degree murder. You'll hear intention. He knew what he was going to do. They drove to a dark road where there were no streetlights. In the dark, not many cars. Stopped on the side of the road. She tried to get away from him, and no, boom, he killed her. He shot and killed Shireen Al-Jabari. We'll ask you to find him guilty of this heinous act. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Robert, you have 30 minutes. I'll let you know when you've used up 28.
Your Honor, I'll actually be doing the opening statement.
Oh, all right, Ms. Mason, I'll let you know.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to apologize. I'm kind of in that couple of weeks after you're getting over a cold where your throat gets a little bit scratchy, so if I start to weave out on you and have to grab a drink of water, I apologize. But we're here to talk about something very, very serious. A tragedy that destroyed a family. And much of what Ms. Garcia told you is what the evidence is going to show. A man shot and killed Shireen Al-Jabari. Now, Shireen had lived with Oscar Sandoval for decades. They weren't married, but they had kids together, they had a family. And you are going to hear 3 very important things about the night that Shireen died. They're going to lead you to find Oscar Sandoval not guilty. Number 1, you're going to hear from an eyewitness, Ms. Chavez, the young woman who did her best to try to save Miss Al-Jabari's life. And she is going to describe for you the vehicle that she saw the man who killed Shireen get into that night. As soon as she saw what happened, when she got out, she leapt into action, started performing CPR. She also got on 911, talking to the operator, telling the operator, suburban style SUV. Now, as Ms. Garcia told you, you are going to learn that Oscar Sandoval's vehicle was found down in Sunland Park later that night. And that his daughter Sarah is going to identify it, and the vehicle she's going to identify for you is not a gray suburban style SUV. Instead, it's a black Ford Explorer. Totally different vehicle. Not the vehicle that was driven by the man who shot and killed Shireen Al-Jabari. Another thing that I want you to pay attention to when you're listening to Maria Chavez's testimony is there are a couple of different counts here. You have the murder in the first degree, and obviously, the loss of Shireen al-Jabari is the most important thing here, but there's also the aggravated assault charge. And I want you to listen very carefully to what Maria Chavez has to say about that charge. She will tell you that this man who got out of the car, who shot Shireen al-Jabari, did not point a weapon at her, did not flourish a weapon at her. That never happened. There was never an aggravated assault. It's a bit silly, but to use Mr. Wilson's example from earlier, there's just no jelly on that sandwich. The third important thing that I really want you to focus on over the next couple of days that the vast majority of the evidence is going to be about, is the investigation in this case. Now, Ms. Garcia talked to you about the Mesilla Marshals and what the Mesilla Marshals did. But something you're going to learn is that on the night that Shireen was killed, 40 different people went to the crime scene that night. 40 different people, back and forth, across where the shooting happened, across where Shireen passed away. 15 of those people were law enforcement officers, trained criminal investigators, been to law enforcement academies, had training and experience as police officers with various agencies. 13 of them were medical professionals who came to the scene to try to save Shireen. One was from the Office of Medical Investigator, the person who comes to collect the remains when someone passes away. And of course, there's the eyewitness. But the other 10 people who came to the scene that night, and the 10 people that you are going to learn did the overwhelming majority of the investigation in this homicide investigation, this case where a woman died. Students from NMSU, kids who'd had a week or two of training by Danny Garch, the lead investigator in this case. He brought them in to collect the evidence. He brought them in to interview witnesses, to look at Mr. Sandoval's car. And those kids, you're going to learn, they did their best. They tried to do exactly what Detective Garcia had taught them. But the kids, you're going to see, the evidence is going to show that a lot of mistakes were made, and as a result, we may never know who that man was in that gray, suburban-style vehicle that shot Shireen al-Jabari. But once you see all the evidence, once you hear from all of the witnesses, one thing I do know is that you will find Oscar Sandoval not guilty.
Thank you, Ms. Mason. The state will now present its evidence. After the state has presented its evidence, the defendant may present evidence but is not required to do so, as the burden is always on the state to prove the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Call your first witness.
State calls Maria Chavez.
Sure. Come towards me, please. This way. Around this way. Tap the cord. Turn, face me. Turn, face me. Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and nothing but the law. Proceed, you may examine your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, would you please state your name?
Maria Chavez,
And would you spell that for the court, model?
M-A-R-I-A-H. Last name is C-H-A-V-E-Z.
And do you live here in Doñana County?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you close to your family?
You extremely close, yes.
Do you remember where you were on April 1st, 2024?
I spent the day with my sister and her children.
And where was that? Don't give me the street address, but,
Her residence is in Mesilla.
okay.
And then went to her house roughly around 9:30.
In the morning?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And spent the day with her. Around 10, her middle child had a play date with one of his friends. We went to the child's residence to pick her up. And then we went and got something to eat at Kane's off of Hotel Shore. And then we proceeded to go to the mall, and we're there for a couple of hours with the kids. About 3 o'clock, we returned to my sister's residence. And then the little girl had to be home at 5:30. After that, went back to my sister's, hung out like I normally do. Her kids get ready for bed about 7:45, and I was out of my sister's residence by 8.
So you left your sister's residence at 8 o'clock,
Yes,
more or less?
Yes.
And where were you going?
To check up on my mother, who lives off of Vassar and Stanford Street.
Is that Mesilla also?
I know Stanford Street is the cutoff, so from Mesilla into Doñana.
And are you sure about that time?
Yes, ma'am.
Was it dark outside or light outside?
It was already dark.
It was dark.
Yes.
And what road did you take from your sister's to your mother's house?
I'm trying to think. My sister I entered into Mesilla. Near Angeles, I went to the right. I don't remember street. I think it might be the highway leading into Mesilla, and I made a left on University.
University?
Yes.
What, if anything, do you remember about driving down University that night? School?
ZMO school.
Okay.
And then there's a VFW after, and then like another residence off to the left. After I passed that residence, I turned my brights on.
Why did you do that?
Because the road is dark all the way until the railroad tracks at the end of University.
Okay.
And as I'm going like on University, I noticed the car on the left side, like coming into Mesilla, where there's nothing, and I thought it out of ordinary because normally nobody parks on that road.
I'm going to interrupt you for just a moment. Your Honor, at this time, I'm going to ask the witness to take a marker and draw University Avenue and which way she was going.
Maybe so. Maybe when it's demonstrative, it's demonstrative to the one.
Thank you, sir.
Then also the
All right, so let's draw University, where you were driving. And you said you saw a car. Where did you see that?
It was probably off to this side. There's like a dirt path, and then there's kind of like a ditch type thing on this side.
Okay. And where are you when you see the car?
Probably not right in line.
Oh. You can sit down. Thank you. When you saw that car, what happened next?
I didn't see anybody at first, and as I'm slowly approaching the vehicle, I stopped, just to kind of like glance to the left to see. The woman ran across from me.
A woman ran across you.
Yes.
And where was your car when you saw the woman run across you?
I was at this point right here, so just like a few feet from the back.
Okay.
And I had stopped, and she ran directly like in front of my vehicle.
Okay. If you would sit back down again, please, just so the record picks up that microphone. So, your testimony is that you're driving down University, or I guess up in this case.
Call for me to call somebody. And then she is running to the right still, up to the other side, like there's another embankment down.
Had you stopped at this point, or did you keep going?
No, I had stopped, like as soon as like brake and everything wasn't proceeding forward. And then when she ran in front of my vehicle, she motioned for me like to call, I assume the cops. and then she proceeded to go right still. He popped out right behind her. She shouted, "No, no, no."
All right. When she shouted, "No, no, no," where was she in your diagram?
She was roughly about right here.
And where was the person that was behind her?
He ended up like right here behind her.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So she shouted, "No, no, no," and then what happened?
I saw 4 shots.
You saw 4 shots?
You know, like the sparks.
Okay. And where were the shots?
Direction where they were on this side.
Okay. What was the man doing?
He was just standing behind her after he shot her, and then he turned around and aimed sort of at me. And
So you're still sitting there.
yeah, I'm still there. And then when he approaches me this way, I reversed my vehicle past where theirs was.
What made you afraid?
The fact that he had a weapon in his possession, and I just witnessed him shoot this woman.
And did you see the weapon when you backed up?
Yes,
Where was it?
in his left hand.
But in relation to where you were.
It was,
What happened then? You backed up?
yes, I reversed, and once his door closed, I reversed and I went forward, so where I could still, like to the point where I could still hear her.
So you said you reversed.
Yes,
Are you saying that then you went back?
yes, I went back forward.
Where was the man in the vehicle when you went back forward?
He was still in the vehicle. He had gotten into the driver's side.
Okay. What did he do then?
The brake lights came on and he proceeded into Mesilla.
Okay. Where was the woman at this point?
She was still on this side where I identified where she was.
What did you do then?
As soon as I realized he had gotten, like, he was driving down into Mesilla, I got out of my vehicle and dialed 911.
So I'm going to back up just a minute. You said that she shouted, "No, no, no," and then he shot her. How was her body positioned when you saw the shots?
She was face down.
I think I can hear you, but can you move that a little closer? I think it's easier on the Jewish ears.
You hear me?
Let me re-ask the question. When she shouted, "No, no, no," what position was her body in at the time?
She was upright. She had turned towards him, and then when she shouted, she was trying to turn around. And then she fell face first into the ground.
Okay. She was behind your vehicle?
Yes.
Where did you stop?
So when I was back here, I pulled like right here in front of her. So the tail end of my car was here, and I could still like see her through my window, like my rear mirror.
So what did you do then?
I got out, dialed 911, and gave my name and what street I was on.
Did you ever approach her?
I approached her when I got out. When I dialed 911 and gave me the address or the street where we were, I was trying to lift her over to get her on her back.
So you lifted her over to get her on her back?
Yes,
Why did you do that?
so I could provide CPR.
What, if anything, did you notice about the woman?
Pretty much everything, what she was wearing, to the details that she had a necklace on, that she had false eyelashes on.
What was she wearing?
She was wearing a black, like, mid-weight jacket, a tank top, and a pair of jeans.
Shoes?
No, ma'am.
No shoes. Did she speak to you?
No, she just gasped for air.
She gasped for air?
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember, if anything, about the person that you saw shoot her?
older man.
Why do you say older?
Hispanic men normally have like this, like droop when they, are older in age. Remember the baseball cap, t-shirt, and jeans?
Glasses?
No.
Facial hair?
Maybe like stubble.
Do you remember about how tall he was?
Maybe 5'6", 5'7".
You said it was dark.
Yes.
How were you able to see him?
My brights on my vehicle were on, and he stepped in front of my vehicle and he pointed his weapon at me.
Did you call 911?
Yes, ma'am.
How long did you do CPR on the person?
Maybe 6 to 7 minutes before the police arrived.
Was the woman breathing?
She was at first, and when I was providing CPR, she had stopped. And I checked for a pulse, and there was none, but I continued CPR.
Did you tell 911 then?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you say?
She stopped breathing, and I think she died.
Hours or what?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you do when they got there?
One of the officers told me to switch with him to do compressions. And then he had me lean against the trunk of my vehicle.
Had you learned to do CPR?
Yes, ma'am.
Where did you learn that?
I took a CPR course through the ranch, through DACC.
What do you remember about the car that you saw?
It was like Explorer type vehicle,
What color?
dark gray. Like the Explorer type.
And did you tell that to the officers there?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Did you notice anything about the license plate?
I couldn't get there, but the license plate was black with New Mexico chilies on it.
Any stickers that you noticed on the car?
No.
When the officers were there, did you tell them what happened?
Yes.
How were you dressed?
I had a black Powerpuff Girl shirt on with some black cargo pants and a pair of black Crocs.
Did you ever change your clothes?
When they took me down to the station to get the sample off my hands and to take like my rings and stuff, is when I changed. Like they collected my clothing and then I had to get new clothes.
Was there anything about the clothing that made you want to change clothes?
It was covered in there was some of her blood on it.
Were you injured at all?
No.
Was anybody else that you saw injured? Your Honor, may I confer with co-counsel?
May,
Thank you. Just a couple more questions. I want to back up just a little bit. You said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that when the man walked back in front of you towards his car, you said he had a gun.
Yes. He had it in his hand still and got into the car and I didn't see it after that.
But you saw it before that?
Yes, ma'am.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe your testimony was is that he had it pointed in your direction. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How did that make you feel?
I was scared.
Scared of, excuse me, scared of what?
Him shooting me in return.
Like right then and there or later?
Yes, right then and there.
That's all I have. Thank you. I pass the witness.
Cross-examination.
Yes. Good afternoon, Ms. Chavez. So on April 1st, you had spent the entire day with your family, right?
Correct.
Just kind of enjoying time with your nieces and nephews and your sister?
Yes.
And that started at about 9:30 that morning, right?
Correct.
And it didn't really end until you were leaving home that night, right? Right around 8 o'clock?
Yes. My sister.
When you got on that section of university you spent so much time on that you turned on your brights, right? And that's because there's not a single street light between one intersection to the other on that
Yes,
strip.
after the residence, there's no light until university further down after the cross street of Stanford.
So way down.
Yes.
So it's fair to say you probably see the stars if you just stood out in the night sky, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you saw what you described as a dark gray Explorer-like vehicle, right?
Correct.
And as you were driving up, you didn't see any lights, right?
No.
You didn't see anything flash in there?
No.
You
I
didn't see
no-
any bright lights, it was just a car?
Yes.
Right? Not even the hazard lights on?
No.
And you weren't planning on stopping when you stopped, right? When that lady ran in front of you?
Well, you stop when somebody runs in front of your vehicle.
Well, but it wasn't expected, right?
No.
You
right.
didn't see her on the side of the road waiting for you to come by?
No, sir.
Okay. So you stopped very suddenly, right?
Yes.
And this lady runs by you, giving you a signal.
Yes.
And then you see a man run by, right?
Correct.
And then you see over there, you see the lady fall, right?
After the shots. Yes.
After the shots. And she's climbing up that rope, right?
Yes.
You hear her yell, no, no, no.
Correct.
And then that man comes back, right?
Yes.
Had you called 911 at this point?
No.
No? You just saw a lady get shot, right?
Yes.
And even after you saw a man seating one, you hadn't called 911 at that point, right? Even though she was signaling you called him.
Yes.
And you see the man walk back, correct?
You need to say yes or no.
Yes.
And he looks at you.
Yes.
Does he do anything else?
He points his weapon at me.
Okay. I want to talk about that. We've spoken before, right?
Yes.
Okay. And at that time, you promised to be honest with your statement, correct?
Yes, of course.
And you were truthful in your statement, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Just like you took the oath here.
Yes, sir.
So in that statement, when you told me he had never pointed a gun at you, were you being honest then, or are you here now?
Both.
Both?
Yes.
So he got at you, or he did point at you?
No, he did.
Okay. How did he point?
He pointed it like this at me, but with his left hand. So-
With his left hand? So when you say he never pointed a gun at me,
Mhm.
you're saying it's both now?
Well, in a sense, it's both. Because it was a trauma situation. It's still the same, but I didn't want to say that he pointed it at me because of fear for myself.
Now, you also spoke to a lot of law enforcement officers right after this happened, right?
I spoke to one.
You spoke to one.
Yes.
Ms. Lourdes Hernandez, does that ring a bell?
Yes. Yes.
She was the officer at the Mesilla Marshal Office, okay? And you talked to her about what happened, right?
Yes.
And one of the things you said today was that you described the male in that car as Hispanic, right?
Yes.
Now, you also, going back to that statement with Sergeant Hernandez, right? That was right after all this happened, right?
Was either a day or two after.
Okay. Well, do you remember talking to her that night?
Yes, when I,
At the Mesilla Marshal's office,
correct,
where they took your clothes.
yes,
And you had a blanket on, they were keeping you warm, right?
yes,
Okay. So you remember talking to her then?
yes,
You remember telling her that you couldn't tell whether that person was Hispanic because of how dark it was?
I told her distinguishing facial features.
What I'm asking you is, do you remember? I could not tell what color his skin was.
I could have sworn I had said that he was like kind of dark complected.
Would it help to refresh your memory if you heard a clip of it?
Sure.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
So to opposing counsel, let me approach the witness.
I have cleaned up, you said. Did you hear that?
Yes,
Did it help refresh your recollection?
a little bit, yes.
A little bit? So that night, I couldn't tell it was too dark.
Yes,
Okay. So the night this happened, you couldn't tell whether or not that individual you saw shoot Miss Aldenbury was Hispanic or not, right? Okay? And then he got into, and it's after he was looking at you,
yes,
and whether or not he pointed the weapon at you, you backed up, right?
yes,
Okay. You backed up in your vehicle.
yes,
And you backed up to parallel with the front of the vehicle, correct?
yes.
Why didn't you back up further?
Because I was afraid he was going to do something to myself.
So instead of continuing to back up because you were afraid, you stopped right next to his vehicle,
I stopped pretty close to it, yeah.
and there was no, and the road was free and clear.
Yes,
You were already backing up.
yes,
Car was in reverse, right? You'd already shown the vehicle put gas in, right?
I don't recall my, yes,
Right? You didn't have to push the car out.
no,
And then he got in the vehicle and left.
yes,
And that's when you called 911.
yes, I reversed, I pulled forward. As soon as his door closed, I pulled forward, just to make sure I could still hear her and see her through my mirror.
Okay. And so you pulled forward after he left.
Yeah, well, before he left. When he closed the door, I pulled forward.
Okay. So you're so scared that you pull forward next to him while he's still there.
No, I pulled away from his vehicle.
But you drove past it.
Yes,
And that's when you called 911.
yes, I called his,
And after that, that's when you got out and began providing first aid.
correct.
Right? Your Honor, may I have a moment?
May,
Going back quickly to the point where you had the gun in front of your car.
Mhm. Yes,
So is your statement today that you told us he didn't point a gun at you because you were afraid for what might happen to you?
He did point it
I'm asking you, when you talked to me, and you said he didn't point a gun at me, your statement, your justification is that you were afraid of what might happen to you.
Yes.
Not because he pointed, not because you didn't, you said he did, not because he didn't actually point a gun at you. You just weren't being truthful with me that way.
Well, I was being truthful. Things come back after a traumatic incident.
So back in October, you didn't remember.
While today, the nightmares come back of that night and everything replays in my mind.
Clip of your statement to me? To help refresh your recollection on what you told us?
I remember what I told you.
Okay. And it was at that time that he did not point a gun?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor?
Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Mariah, you said a minute ago that as you're driving down University, that this was unexpected, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
How did it make you feel when this happened? Or excuse me, when you saw her run in front of your car?
I didn't know what was happening. Like, if you see somebody running, you automatically assume that something is coming after them or something bad's going to happen.
And then when you saw the man shoot her, how did that make you feel?
I was afraid. I was afraid for myself and for her.
Fair to say you were in what we would call shock.
Yes, ma'am.
Why did you back up?
Out of fear, if he were to have fired, like, to avoid the contact.
So you were afraid.
Yes, ma'am. And nightmares.
Sounds as if your testimony based on Mr. McCormick's questions that more details are coming to mind. Is that true?
Correct.
He asked you about Detective Hernandez taking your statement.
Yes.
And I recall that you testified that you didn't say that he pointed at you because you were afraid.
Yes.
What were you afraid of?
Him shooting me. Or that he would try to say that he didn't.
So you're in the Mesilla Marshal's office speaking to a detective.
Yes.
And, well, excuse me, you're speaking with Mr. McCormick. And you tell him that he did not point the gun at you. Did you tell him you were afraid? But did you say
No, I didn't.
Why didn't you say that?
Just out of fear
Fear of what?
that there could be retaliation later for myself, my safety.
How has this affected you since then?
For a while there, I couldn't drive down that road, and I'd have to go all the way around. It's scary and it's sad because I don't understand why somebody could do this.
Let's switch gears a little bit. I just want to follow up on something he asked you about. When you spoke to the detective, you said you couldn't tell his skin color because it was too dark. Is that right?
Yes.
How were you able to see that night?
My brights were on, and when he stepped in front of my vehicle.
Were you able to distinguish his facial features?
Yes, a little bit,
So-
as older men, they sometimes do.
Were you able to see how tall he was?
Roughly about 5'6", 5'7".
So, do I understand correctly that your bright lights were shining?
Yes, ma'am.
And when he stepped into your bright lights, is that when you saw him?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, that's when you were able to see the facial features?
Yes.
Okay. Was it bright or dark behind him?
It was dark behind him.
Thank you.
Recross?
No, Your Honor.
May this witness be found to be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mahoney?
Yes, Your Honor.
State calls Deputy Jonathan Riggs. Your Honor, before the deputy steps up, may counsel and I approach?
You may be ready.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, so that we may discuss some matters out of your hearing. It's the attorney's duty to offer evidence they believe proper, to object to evidence they believe improper. It's my duty to decide what evidence finally will be admitted for your consideration. It may be necessary for us to confer about this for other matters, time to time during the trial. Must be discussing. You may talk among yourselves, but please do not discuss the case. I gave this instruction about 8 months ago, and the jurors were getting along so well. They started talking to each other, and I couldn't hear the attorney. So this is your first day, but when you get into the third or fourth day, you'll be acquainted with each other. And I will then, if that happens again, I'll have you just keep it down. May I approach?
Jonathan Riggs.
Forward, please. I'll step on the cord, just step over. Back up a little bit. Nope, nope, you're on the cord. Over here. Let's see. Mr. Garcia, exhibit labels. Yellow states 19, and put it on the and take that off. Take down the diagram. And hold it up and put it on the evidence table. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a demonstrative exhibit. It's not entered as evidence in this proceeding. It was just to aid you in the testimony of the witness. And the demonstrative exhibit will not go to the jury. So you may begin your examination.
Thank you. Sir, would you please state,
I'm currently a deputy with the Mesilla Marshals.
how long have you been in law enforcement?
Approximately 20 years.
How long with Mesilla?
I've been with Mesilla since 2023.
So, I think most people understand what the police and sheriffs are. What is a marshal?
Basically, a marshal is just a leftover from our Wild Wild West days. Usually, a marshal is not only law enforcement, but also serves the court within the town or village that you're at. So, at our town, we also do court-related activities. We act as bailiffs, serve processes of the court within our own town.
But you also do, like law enforcement, like police type sorry to be so general, but things that like police departments and deputies would do, sheriff's offices?
Like I said,
Okay. You just had double duty working with the courts as well?
yes,
Okay. Were you working on April 1st, 2024?
I was.
Is it a night shift?
Yes, I'm assigned to the graveyard.
What were your hours that night? Schedule?
We work from 6 o'clock to 6 in the morning.
Do you remember if you got any calls that night to go out to anything?
Yes, I received a call from MRDA, which is the dispatch of a possible gunshot victim on within the town of Mesilla jurisdiction on University.
Is that Doñana County,
Yes, it is.
state of New Mexico?
Yes, it is.
And did you respond to that call?
I did. I was the only deputy out for Mesilla, and I was the one that was originally given the call.
What do you remember seeing? What were your observations when you arrived?
Prior to arriving on scene, one of the DASO supervisors had me ATL, or what's called BOLO, be on the lookout for the vehicle that was given.
Okay, let's back up just a little bit. When you arrived, did you see any other vehicles there?
No.
Was anybody performing? Was the fire department there? AMR, anybody?
Yes, I arrived late to the scene. So when I arrived, fire, ambulance, and other law enforcement officers with DASO.
Did you see the gunshot victim?
I did.
What was going on with her when you saw her?
The DASO deputies and medical personnel were performing life-saving measures.
Did you participate in that at all?
No, there was, I could tell I wasn't needed. I basically offered to retrieve medical supplies from the back of my unit, and also I gave them a pair of my medical EMT shears that I carry on myself.
And you normally carry those with you?
Yes.
And did you speak to anybody?
I was told our reporting party.
The reporting party. And did you stand with the reporting party?
I did. Basically just stood by with her to make sure she didn't leave the scene. If she needed anything, that was really all I did.
Do you recall her demeanor?
Yes.
What was that?
She was, to me, you could tell she was a little shaken up about what she witnessed, but she really just was calm and talked with me.
And then after that, what was your role on the scene?
My role, after I was relieved from watching her, was to just contact my chain of command, advise them of the situation, and assist other deputies that were, we were trying to contain the street, keep people from going down it, preserve the crime scene. I put up barrier tape. I assisted with running the crime scene log.
Were you wearing a body cam that night?
I was.
Was it working?
Yes.
Was it turned on?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I have just a moment?
May,
Your Honor, may we approach just a moment? Yes, Your Honor.
may I hear you?
May we approach?
You may. We're off the record.
Deputy, you've seen a copy of your body cam, have you not?
Yes.
And is it a true and accurate copy of what you saw that night?
Yes.
Now, I'm going to ask to admit State's Exhibit 18 to evidence.
No objection.
No objection, State's Exhibit 18 is admitted as evidence. Ladies and gentlemen, I've admitted State's Exhibit 18 into evidence as an exhibit. You may examine it. With regard to this exhibit and any other exhibits that may be admitted into evidence during the trial, you should consider it in determining the facts. Just as with oral testimony, you may give any exhibit such weight and value as you think it deserves in helping you to decide what happened in this case. May present your exhibit.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, stand up. This is for your benefit. Once you get a little bit relaxed, don't be sedated when you're sitting there. And sit down and relax. There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, we're having technical difficulties, as you've obviously observed. Take a 15-minute break. I hope that we'll be back in 15, but we'll take as much time as necessary to correct the problem. On behalf of the prosecution and the defense, I sympathize with the delay, but we're on schedule in this case. Please rise for this jury and assess.
And then in addition to that, are there additional sort of optional trainings that you chose to take?
Yes.
That's pretty normal for law enforcement, right? To take training to get better at their jobs?
You're either volunteer or voluntold.
Yeah. So, by the time that you were involved in this investigation, the Academy plus, I assume, a bunch of volunteered or voluntold trainings?
Yes.
Okay. And after you'd been through all that training, then you knew how important it was to keep this scene as clean as possible, right?
Yes.
And to minimize any chance that there might be any sort of contamination of the evidence.
Yes.
So part of how you did that was you and one of the officers from the sheriff's department set up,
Yes.
and on that log, you guys kept track of in total about 40 people who had to enter the scene that night, correct?
Yes.
That included 13 people who were either from ambulance companies or fire departments who were there to try to save Miss Eljaberry's life, correct?
Yes.
And then there were 15 sworn law enforcement officers who came to the scene that night, correct?
Yes.
There was an investigator from the Office of the Medical Investigator who came to deal with the remains, correct?
Yes.
And in addition to that, there was, of course, the eyewitness who was also on the scene, correct?
That is correct.
In addition to that, the Mesilla marshals brought in 10 interns to the scene, correct?
That is correct.
And those interns were supposed to be supervised by law enforcement personnel at all times, correct?
Your Honor, objection, speculation. He has no personal knowledge of that.
If he has personal knowledge, he may answer, otherwise he's just stating he does not have personal knowledge of that.
Rephrase. Officer, in your time at the Mesilla Marshals, have you had the opportunity, and when you work with the interns, do you supervise them when they're doing whatever work it is you're doing with them?
Not me normally as a deputy. They're usually supervised by a member of the CID, the Criminal Investigations. It just depends on the situation.
But in your experience in working with the interns, there would always be an officer supervising them, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in this case, just in looking at your logs of the scene that you kept track of, there were a couple of people. First, let's talk about Eddie Flores. He's a detective from the sheriff's department, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. When I was looking at your exit log, it notes that he entered the scene, but it does not have a time for when they're on the side of the road 9 minutes later, right?
Yes.
So what would that mean?
Normally, in my experience, if there's not a time that's out, it's usually because that person, for whatever reason, needs to enter and exit. So normally, if they have a final exit time, that's when they're completely out of the scene. I really couldn't answer why he wouldn't be, on the final exit.
So when these various officers, ambulance personnel, whoever, wind up on this chart that you're keeping track of, how do you get the entry and exit times that you put on the chart?
Right. So when we usually establish a crime scene and the need for a crime scene log, that's normally we try to go around and get everybody who's already in the scene. We try to backtrack and sometimes find people that have already maybe potentially left and that were in. They're officially done. Let's say, for an example, AMR. If they didn't serve any function and they're out, that's when they're signed out.
Okay. So for the other officers on the scene, is it sort of your job to keep track of them when they leave, or is it their job to come to you and say, Deputy Reyes, I'm out?
So normally, yeah, it's kind of, we expect law enforcement or even fire to a certain point to let us know when they're officially leaving, because you may not be exactly where they're leaving from. You see what I'm saying? You may be on the other side potentially.
Okay. And so I know you talked a little bit with Ms. Garcia about how when you got to the scene, there were already people working on Ms. Eljaberry. With law enforcement who were there, were those folks from the Doniana Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
Okay. And so Doniana Sheriff's Office made it to the scene before the Mesilla Marshal's Office?
Yes.
Were you the first Mesilla marshal on scene?
I was.
And then we saw on the video that Ms. Garcia played, that you sort of walked her through, there were a bunch of cars initially on scene, correct?
Yes, there was.
Can that be a concern for the preservation of the crime scene?
Yes, it can.
And why is that?
I mean, the number one thing is, potential contamination of evidence, running over of evidence, removal of evidence, adding new stuff that wasn't originally there. We did our best. It's an obvious public street that's being used. We try to do our best when we had sufficient resources other than life-saving to start preserving the scene. There was a portion that, you kind of see us tying another car to back up.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to keep everybody out that doesn't need to be there.
So, sort of a good rule of thumb is the fewer people that you can have there to get the job done, the better?
Yes.
All right, I have no further questions.
Can you redirect this witness?
No, no.
Will this witness be permanently excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Mason?
Yes, Your Honor.
You're excused. Thank you, sir. Call your next witness.
State calls Ryan Schuster.
Come towards me, please. Step over that corner that you step on. Turn and face me. Raise your right hand. Swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth and the penalty of law. Howard? I do. Have a seat, please.
May I begin, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Would you please tell us your name?
My name is Ryan Schuster,
And how do you spell your last name?
Schuster.
And Mr. Schuster, what is your occupation?
With the Mesilla Marshals Department,
Are
currently,
currently,
I am unemployed.
are you a student?
I'm a student, yes.
Where are you a student at?
I'm a student at New Mexico State University.
What are you studying?
I'm studying criminal justice.
Okay, so you mentioned the Mesilla Marshals. Are you also there?
Yes, ma'am, I work there as an engineering.
So Houston, if you indulge the court, move that microphone up towards you. Speak directly into it so we can hear you.
Yes, sir.
A little better. Turn it, move it up a little bit. Move it forward.
Intern there, I worked as a photographer.
And how long were you there?
I was there about a year, from May of 2023 to May of 2024.
And when you were there as a photographer, how often would you work?
It depended, but I'd say usually about once a week.
And what would you do?
I would be called out to crime scenes, and I would take pictures of crime scenes to find evidence.
You would take pictures, the photo equipment you would use, did that belong to the Mesilla Marshals?
Sometimes, sometimes I use my own personal Nikon D50. Sometimes they issued me at one point, they acquired and issued me a Nikon D3400.
So when you go to a crime scene, what would your role typically be?
Photographer.
Did you do any kind of investigation? Ask anybody any questions?
No,
Just photography?
just photography.
When you would go on a crime scene, did you report to a supervisor?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you go to a crime scene on April 1st, 2024?
I did.
And where was that?
It was Mayor Fernandez.
I didn't understand what
He
you
wants to
said.
refer to this as one.
Yeah, you may refer to your notes, but if you do, opposing counsel is entitled to a copy of them, and they use those. So, any objection to him referring to his notes if you have an opportunity to review his notes?
I don't know what notes he's referring to at this point.
Show him the notes he wishes to refer to.
Younger, I may be able to ask a question. Do you remember what street it was on?
Yes, it was on University Avenue.
Was that Doñana County,
Yes,
state of New Mexico?
yes.
Your Honor, I don't believe there's any need for the notes.
May I proceed?
Thank you. How long were you there at that scene?
I was on scene about 18 hours.
18 hours.
Yes.
What time did you arrive? Do you recall?
Yes, I arrived on scene at about 2100, 2130.
So for those of us non-military, we're talking 10:30 maybe? Or that would
9
be
o'clock.
9.
Yeah, maybe 10 at the latest is the time that we got out there.
My son's military, but I can't tell your time, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So you arrived there, you said you were there for 18 hours?
Okay, yes.
Okay. And did you stay there the whole time?
Occasionally around, I believe it was 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, I went to a nearby truck stop, got some coffee, and came back, but that's the only time that I left.
And did you take photos while you were there?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, may I approach a witness of what's been marked as State's Exhibit 1 for purposes of identification after showing to opposing counsel? Typically, I understand the court prefers to do this one by one and not 7. Would you prefer I do all 7 at once?
Why don't you show them this? It's State's Exhibits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Yes, sir.
Show those 7 to opposing counsel and to the witness, but ask for their admission individually.
Yes, sir.
But that way you can expedite the testimony.
Thank you. Mr. Schuster, I placed in front of you what's been marked as State's Exhibits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Drawing your attention to Exhibit number 1, do you recognize that?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you recognize that?
This is a photo that I took.
Do not testify as to the contents of the photo without submitting it as evidence. But you can answer the question by saying, do you recognize the exhibit?
I do.
Does that, what you recognize,
Yes, I do recognize.
accurately depict and portray what you observed and photographed that evening?
Yes.
You may continue.
Is that a copy of, well, I guess the judge already asked you, that's a true and accurate copy of the photo that you took?
Yes, that's correct.
Is it what you saw that night?
Yes.
And I asked him in minutes.
No objection, Your Honor.
That objection states exhibit 1, admitted as evidence, and you publish it to the jury.
Thank you. Before I do that, Mr. Schuster, I will draw you to. Same questions. Do you recognize that?
I do.
Is that a true and accurate copy of, or depiction of what you saw that evening?
It is.
And did you take that photo?
Yes.
The state would ask to admit State's Exhibit 2 evidence and publish to the jury.
McCartney?
No objection.
No objection, so ordered.
Mr. Schuster, on number 3. Do you recognize what's been marked as State's Exhibit 3?
Yes.
Did you take that photo?
Yes.
Is that a true and accurate depiction of what you saw?
Yes.
The state would ask to admit State's Exhibit 3 evidence and publish to the jury.
McCartney?
No objection.
No objection, so ordered.
Moving on to number 4. What's been marked as State's Exhibit 4, do you recognize that one?
Yes.
Did you take that photo?
Yes.
Is that an accurate depiction of what you saw that night?
Yes.
State would ask that Exhibit 4 be entered to evidence and published.
McCartney?
Objection, Your Honor.
Understood. Overruled. Any other objection?
No.
Mr. Schuster? My apologies, Your Honor. Did you say something?
Yes. State's exhibit 4 will be admitted as evidence.
And may I publish?
May.
Mr. Schuster, what's been marked as State's Exhibit 5, do you recognize that one?
Yes.
Did you take that photo?
Yes.
Does that accurately depict what you saw that night?
Yes.
The state would ask that Exhibit 5 be entered to evidence and published to the jury.
Mr. McCormick?
No objection.
No objection. State's Exhibit 5 will be admitted as evidence. May publish it to the jury.
Thank you. Mr. Schuster, what's been marked as State's Exhibit 6, do you recognize that one?
Yes.
And did you take that photo?
Yes.
Is it an accurate depiction of what you saw?
Yes.
State would ask that Exhibit 6 be entered to evidence and published.
McCormick?
Only my prior objection.
Aye. State's Exhibit 6 will be admitted as evidence. May publish it to the jury.
Thank you. Last one, Mr. Schuster. What's been marked as State's Exhibit 7, do you recognize that one?
Yes.
Need a cleaner?
Did you take that photo?
Yes.
And is that an accurate depiction of what you saw?
Yes.
Now, the state asks that State's Exhibit 7 be admitted to evidence and published to the jury.
McCormick?
Only my prior objection.
State's Exhibit 7 will be admitted as evidence. You may publish it to the jury. May publish it to the jury.
At this time, I will retrieve the exhibits. Now, publishing State's Exhibit 1. Mr. Schuster, you testified that you took this photo.
Yes.
Do you know what street is showing in the photo?
That's University Avenue.
Is this the scene you were called to that night for the shooting on April 1st,
Yes.
2024?
That's correct.
Doña County,
Yes.
State of New Mexico?
Yes.
Hang on a second. They were trying to assist this jury by showing the photograph that doesn't have the glare on it. You released this.
Mr. Schuster, when you took this photo, what were you trying to capture?
I was trying to capture an overall view. I wanted to capture as much of the scene in one picture as I could.
Now, publishing State's Exhibit 2. And you also took this photo?
Yes.
What were you attempting to capture with this one?
Similar thing, just from a different angle. I wanted to capture as much of the scene from this angle that I could.
There should be a laser pointer in front of you. Do you see?
Yes.
Do you know, and if you don't, that's fine, but do you know what objects are depicted in this?
Yes.
And could you point to them and tell us?
This is a unit. This is a vehicle, and this is a body. This is another unit. This line back here is the crime scene tape. These are telephone poles just along the side of the road.
Going back to the body, is that the body that was the subject of the call that night?
Yes,
So is that a deceased body?
that is, yes.
Now, publishing State's Exhibit 3. And when you took this photo, what were you attempting to capture?
Again, this is an overall photo attempting to show as much of the scene as I can from this angle, and specifically the body.
Is that the same car that was in the last one we looked at?
Yes, that's correct.
And that's the same body that we looked at?
Yes, that's correct.
And that's on University, you said?
That's correct. Yes.
Now, publishing State's Exhibit 4. were you capturing with this one, Mr. Schuster?
I was focusing on the body.
So underneath are you aware of what is around it? And not the evidence markers, but the blue and
Try to use some of the white is going to be trash from opening packs of like bandages and stuff like that. Life-saving equipment kind of left behind.
so at this point, life-saving measures had already been attempted,
Yes.
and the paramedics were gone.
Yes.
And publishing states Exhibit 5. Mr. Schuster, what is this?
This is the face of the deceased body.
And when you took this photo, you're attempting to capture her face, her head.
That's correct.
And publishing states Exhibit 6. This photo, this is kind of difficult to see. Can you tell us what you were capturing here?
Yes. This right here is a necklace that the deceased was wearing. We figured it might be important evidence, so I captured a photo of that.
And the blue things, are those fingers?
Yes, these are his hands as he's holding it in place while I take the photograph.
Okay. And where on her body was this necklace?
Just around here.
Publishing states Exhibit 7. What was this photo, Mr. Schuster?
This is a photo of the deceased's back.
And what were you attempting to capture with this?
The bullet holes in the back.
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
So, I have some questions for you.
Cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Mr. Schuster. Now, your official title when you were with Mesilla Marshals was CSIE, is that correct?
That's correct.
And there were several of you involved in this program,
Yes.
right? And would it be fair to say that each of you kind of had a different specialty that you focused on?
Somewhat.
Some took more interest in fingerprinting, and versus you took a little more interest in photography. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Kind of what happened?
Yeah.
And you became a photographer because you had told people at Mesilla Marshals that you had done it as a hobby, right?
Yes.
And you had some good equipment.
Yes.
Nikon D,
The Nikon D50,
excuse me, still a pretty nice camera, right?
2004, sure.
And you still had to get certified how to become a photographer, correct?
Yes.
And what class did you take to become certified?
Multiple classes. We did cover some photography in basic and advanced. I took a basic photography class and then I took an advanced forensic crime scene photography class.
Okay. And were these all taught by the same person?
Yes.
And who was that?
Detective Garcia.
Detective person. Okay. And how long in total, of all the trainings you just talked about, do you think you spent in a classroom on training?
Sorry, can you say that again?
About how much time do you think you spent in total in your training classes?
120 hours just for the photography.
Just for the photography, 120 hours? And then is there any other time you spent taking classes?
Yes.
Okay, how much time is that?
I'd say probably another 40 to 80 hours.
Okay, so 40 to 80 in a work, 40 hours in a work week, so 4 to 5 weeks in training, correct?
Yes.
And how long were you with the internship program here? 5 weeks out of the year. You've been trained to do this work, right? And in fact, you helped with some of those classes, correct? You helped set them up and run them?
You need to say yes or no.
Yes.
And so on April 1st of 2024, when you were called out, you didn't immediately go to the scene, right?
No.
No? Where was the first place you went?
The first place I went was home to get changed into my uniform.
Okay. And then after that?
Then I went to the Mesilla Marshal Station.
And that was where you were briefed on what happened, correct?
Yes.
And that's where you changed into, I guess, for lack of a better term, a bunny suit?
No.
No? Did you change into anything?
No.
Did you wear anything extra?
That at that time, at the station, no.
No? Did you ever put on any personal protective equipment?
Later, yes.
Later? Where?
Once we arrived on scene.
Once you arrived on scene? Okay. So you didn't get into the Mesilla Marshal vehicle
I
with
did.
your personal protective gear on?
I got into the Mesilla Marshal's vehicle. I do not recall.
You don't recall when you put on your protective gear?
I recall that I had it when I was on scene. I don't recall specifically when I put it on.
All right. So you don't recall where you put on that personal protective gear?
I recall correct.
And when you were at the scene, you were tasked.
Sure. Yes.
And so going back to State's Exhibit 4, this is the photo you took of the scene as you found it, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know who put the blanket on top of the decedent?
I do not.
You don't know? Assisted in photographing the body once OMI arrived.
After OMI arrived?
Yeah.
2.
2? Not 4?
2, maybe 3.
2, maybe 3. So at least 2 to 3 people in addition to OMI around the body?
Yes.
Yes. And was that